Have you found that once you've decided to find your purpose in life, that it seems like the hardest thing to find? You're not sure where to start or what your next steps should be. The good news is that in this video, I outline one of the biggest reasons why you haven't found your purpose in life. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to do to start moving in the right direction. In this video, we're talking about people pleasing. Hey everyone, I'm Alex. I'm a former 9-to-5er turned life coach, and I'm here to help you get on your path to purpose, start your dream business, and leave your 9-to-5. So stick around to learn what people pleasing is and what it looks like, how it keeps you from finding your purpose in life, my own experience with people pleasing, how to stop people pleasing, and what happens once you stop people pleasing. So let's start with what people pleasing is, or what people pleasers are. People pleasers tend to do anything possible to avoid conflict, even if it means turning into an entirely different person. Your worth depends on how others see you, and people pleasers need validation from others to feel good about themselves. They can go to extremes to earn words of praise from others. So this definition by Medical News Today reads, "The term people pleaser refers to a person who has a strong urge to please others, even if at their own expense. They may feel that their own wants and needs do not matter, or alter their personality around others." So we can see that people pleasers are people that tend to abandon themselves and their own inner truth in order to keep everyone around them happy. So what can this look like in real life? It can look like conflict avoidance and or guilt avoidance. It can look like saying yes when you want to say no. It can mean that you fear rejection and or want to fit in with others. So this could look like wanting to go to university just because that's what you should do or what is societally accepted, and all your peers are going and having that experience and you don't want to be left out. This can look like fearing disappointing others, and when we're growing up, this primarily can look like teachers and parents. And you could also feel responsible for the emotional reactions of others, which means that you'll do anything to keep them happy and avoid that emotional reaction from someone else. So over time, when you continually abandon your own needs and wants in order to keep everyone around you happy or to avoid conflict or to avoid guilt, what happens is that you slowly lose touch with your own inner knowing, or you could call it your intuition, your gut feelings, or your authentic self. Basically, your own north compass that's inside you, you lose touch with that. And as a result of this, you can start to lose trust with yourself because you don't know what is right and what is wrong. You stop looking to your own north compass to make decisions and to know your inner truth. So you can also start to think that others know better and you look to others to help you make decisions, or you can ask a lot of people for their opinions before you're able to make a decision. Another consequence of people pleasing is that your self-worth comes from external validation. So instead of backing yourself, you seek praise from others. You perform in ways that will make them happy and that they will give you positive feedback in order for you to have self-worth. You may find it hard to stand up for yourself because you either don't want to create conflict with someone else, or you feel like others know better than you, or you don't want to upset them in any way by having a contrary opinion. Another thing that can happen is you may not feel like you have your own identity. You may feel like you're not sure how to act in situations where there's no expectation of how you should be acting. And you may look to others around you to give you some indication of how you should be acting in that situation instead of just being yourself. So an example of this could be if you're just casually hanging out with friends, there's really no expectations in that sort of situation, and you could find yourself feeling a little lost, not sure how to act, and like you don't have your own unique identity. Another thing that can happen is that you won't know what you like or what you're passionate about in life because you've spent your whole life doing what you've been told, or doing what is societally accepted, or just doing what's expected in certain situations, that you've lost connection with your inner truth. And similar to feeling like you don't have an identity, you suddenly don't really know what you're passionate about in life. So now that you have a little bit of a better idea of what people-pleasing looks like, and some of the outcomes of people-pleasing behavior, let's hop into how this affects your purpose in life. So it's my belief that when you disconnect from your inner truth, your intuition, your inner knowing, or your authentic self, whatever you like to think of that as, you disconnect from your purpose. And the way I like to think about this is every time you do something to please someone else, when you say yes, when you really wanted to say no, or you did something that you didn't really feel like doing just because you felt you should do it, every time you do something like that, you take a step down a path that takes you away from your purpose. And all of these little steps add up. Each one slowly takes you away from your purpose and your true path in life, and then one day you wake up wondering how you got here. You wake up suddenly to a life where you're unsatisfied, unfulfilled, unhappy, frustrated, and just clueless as to how you really got here in life. And so all of this people pleasing keeps you acting a certain part or playing a certain role instead of being your authentic self. So none of your actions or goals in life are driven by what you came here to do in this lifetime. And really, it's just being driven by societal expectations or the expectations of your parents or the expectations of your teachers or peer group or whoever. So I have a lot of experience with people pleasing. I feel like the majority of my life up until my late 20s, I was a people pleaser. And for me, this really looked like being susceptible to the opinions and feedback from adults in my life growing up, so my parents and teachers, as well as societal conditioning. I really wanted to please the adults in my life growing up, and so I definitely took on the persona of like the good girl persona who isn't a troublemaker or who just makes life easier for their parents basically, who goes to school, gets good grades, like does all of those sorts of things. And my worth at the time was definitely connected to getting good grades, getting praise from adults and other people in my life, and generally how people perceived me. So after I got my degree as an engineer, I definitely got a lot of validation from other people for having that degree. Whenever I would meet people and they would say, "What do you do?" and I would say, "I'm an engineer," they would always light up and they would be like, "Wow, good for you. That is so cool." And you definitely receive a lot of positive praise for having certain degrees. And when I was younger and I wasn't quite awake to the fact that I didn't want to be an engineer yet and I was still happy in that degree, that sort of feedback really made me feel good. But as I got older and once I realized that I was ready to be done with this career, every time someone would praise me for being an engineer, it actually would give me a lot of imposter syndrome and it didn't make me feel good, because I was getting praised for something that I was no longer interested in or identified with. And I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but as far as the people pleasing goes, it made me really susceptible to societal conditioning, and I really wanted to live the perfect life or go down the perfect path in life, and that looked like getting good grades, going to university, getting a good degree, and then getting a well-paying job. And I really feared doing anything unconventional or falling behind in any sort of way. And as I got older, especially like once I was out of school and working, I definitely felt like I didn't have a strong personality like we talked about earlier. And I think that this comes from playing a role for so long, and then all of a sudden, once school is done and you've kind of gotten a stable job, all of a sudden you don't really have a role to play anymore and you're just left to be yourself. And for someone who's a people pleaser or who is trying to go along with societal norms, all of a sudden there was nothing really telling me what to do with my life or what the right path was in life. And as far as the identity thing goes, I always had this strange feeling inside where I would look at some friends in my life or just people in general, and they always seemed to have such strong, distinct personalities, and they just seemed like they were so themselves and just like at home being themselves, very unapologetically doing whatever they wanted. And that never felt like my experience. I definitely felt like I don't have a strong identity. I don't really know who I am. And I definitely feared being unapologetically me. And so there were definitely times in social settings where I just didn't really know how to act. It wasn't clear to me how to act in those situations, and I was always a little bit aware of this, and it just left me feeling really self-conscious in those situations. Another thing that I experienced was I suppressed things that I was interested in because I felt that they would look too weird or that they were kind of contrary to who I was. Like, for example, I was really interested in kind of more woo-woo things like astrology, but I wasn't sure if that was entirely socially acceptable. So I was worried to express this part of myself socially for fear of social rejection or, other people's opinions. And I also felt that it was very contrary to being an engineer, where like engineers are very logical and very science-based and like definitely not interested in astrology. So I felt that because my like dominant personality at the time was an engineer, that I couldn't then be interested in woo-woo things. Another thing that I experienced was that I didn't have really any goals in life, and I really let like the school system and the job system be my goals in life. Like, it's very easy to have no goals in life up until, say, around the age of 25, because everything is clearly laid out for you. So you kind of know what you're supposed to be doing in life, and you have these predetermined milestones already in place. Like, graduate from high school with good good grades, get into university, get a good degree, maybe get a master's or get a job and work for a good company and like kind of slowly work your way up in that company. And so what can happen is you have all of these predetermined milestones in your life, and then those just kind of go away. Like, once you've been in your job for a couple years, all of a sudden, like, everything is in your hands. All of your goals are now up to you to set. And I think this is one of the things that can kind of lead people to having a quarter life crisis, because you no longer really know what you're reaching for, and you're no longer getting positive feedback for hitting these milestones in life. And so I definitely felt like there was a period where I was sort of just coasting along in life. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I didn't have a vision for my life or my career, and I didn't really have like any particular goals. And this was definitely around the age of like 25-ish, 26. And I'd already just had all these goals placed upon me by society. And so you can do things like buying a car or like buying your first home or like a little condo downtown or whatever. But like, once you've done those things, it's sort of up to you to then figure out like what's next in life. And if any of this is resonating with you, I definitely have other videos where I touch on these things. I have a video that talks about finding your vision in life so that you can start to have a plan to move forward. And I have a couple other videos talking about how to find your purpose. And so I'm gonna link those up here, and you can check those out after you're done watching this video. All right, so let's move on to how to stop people pleasing. And the first step to stop or change anything in your life is always awareness. Awareness that this thing that you're doing is not serving you, and awareness of what it looks like in your day-to-day life. So you can ask yourself, how often do you say yes when you want to say no? How often do you do things because you feel that you should do them rather than you want to do them? How often do you do things that you don't really want to do because you fear upsetting or disappointing someone in your life? So you can take the information that you've learned in this video about what people-pleasing behaviors look like, how they can affect your life, and you can start to think about your own life and determine if you have some people-pleasing behaviors. And if you have determined that you do have some people-pleasing behaviors, or maybe more like myself, then the next step is to accept the fact that this has happened. Accept the fact that this has been your behavior and your life up until now. Even if you're off track, it's not the time to beat yourself up and wonder, oh, why did this happen? You just have to accept that it is what it is. And the next step for you to move forward is to figure out how to change it. And for this one, I'll also add that a lot of things in life happen for a reason, as cliche as that is. And usually we just can't really see or put the pieces together until we're down the road. Hindsight really is 2020, so it's not the time right now to try and figure out why this has happened. It's just the time to accept it and figure out how to move forward. So the next step is to make a list. So once you've done some reflecting and you've identified some places or people or just times in your life that you abandon yourself the most often, make a list of those. And the reason you want to make a distinct list is so that it's in the back of your mind. And so in the future, when you encounter one of these situations, you'll have that awareness to interrupt the automatic pattern in your life. So for example, if you always say yes to doing something that you really aren't interested in doing, and you put that on your list, then in the future, when say that person asks you to do the thing that you don't like doing, you can have that moment of pause and of reflection, and you'll think, okay, I put this on my list, so I don't want to automatically say yes to this because I really don't want to say yes to it in general. And as you're making your list, you can also reflect on how you feel when you make these decisions that take you off your path or that have you abandoning your own inner truth. And you can also reflect on how would you prefer to feel in the future. So if you are always saying yes or doing things that you feel you should do rather than what you want to do, and if after the fact it's always making you feel a little resentful or a little annoyed or however it's making you feel, then you know that this isn't working for you, right? You've got that negative reaction, that negative feeling. That's your feedback telling you you're going off track. And so you can think, how would I want to feel in the future? Even though it can be hard to set boundaries, how are you going to feel when you set a boundary? Are you going to feel pride? Are you going to feel that growth and that integrity of following your own inner truth? The next step that you can do is dedicate yourself to getting to know yourself again. And so one of the top things that you can do is try to identify your top values. And you can use your values as a compass to help you make decisions in life that are in alignment with your inner truth. So you can ask yourself, when did I last feel the happiest or the most fulfilled in life? And what were you doing? From those circumstances, you can start to pick out your top values in life. For example, if you went on a 5-day backpacking trip and that's the last time you felt the happiest or the most fulfilled, then maybe you have some sort of value around freedom or adventure or something like that. And so that's how you can start to really pick out your values. And once you have a list of your top values, take some time to reflect on what values are currently not being honored in your life. So back to the example, if you have some strong values around freedom and adventure, but you only have 2 weeks off a year from your job, then maybe that's somewhere in your life where you're really not honoring that value in your life. So you can think about your values and think about the situations or the people with which you most often abandon your own personal values. So as far as getting to know yourself again, you can also start to identify your own personal preferences. This may be something that you've held yourself back from for years, but never really let yourself explore, like the example of me with more woo-woo things in life. And it can also just be exploring doing things different than your social group, especially things that interest you, that you've always kind of had that little nudge in the back of your mind, but you just haven't let yourself explore them because that's not how your family does things, or that's not how your social group does things. And so if you've had something that you've been holding back because of your social group, definitely start to explore that as well. The next step is to dedicate yourself to having boundaries. This is where you dedicate yourself to making positive changes in your life, where you stop the people-pleasing behavior. This is where you start to really stand up for what you want, your own inner truth, and you start to make those changes. This is the step that you really need to dedicate yourself to, because it can be really hard to all of a sudden have awareness of your people-pleasing behaviors and living out of integrity and to continue living that way. So you can't wake up from the matrix and then just continue living your life the same way. So having boundaries looks like saying no when you want to say no, sticking to your values, having boundaries with people, and being okay with letting people down. You have to be okay with this perception of letting others down. You're not really letting others down, and when you do things to please other people, you're letting yourself down. This is your one life. You need to focus on living it for you. You need to be okay with the perception of disappointing others. And if anyone has emotional reactions to the changes that you start making in your life, that is not your fault. They are totally responsible for their own emotional reactions. You're gonna have to be okay with being perceived as difficult or fussy because you're no longer just going with the flow, being easy to get along with, and pleasing others. You're really gonna start standing up for yourself, and others in your life may perceive this as you being difficult, and that's okay. And you're gonna have to be okay with making decisions on your own and possibly making mistakes. This is a time when you really want to stop looking to others for their advice and opinions on what you should do with your life and really start to make these decisions on your own. And just know that you may make decisions that other people say that's gonna be a mistake. And you just have to really stick to your own inner knowing and know that, like, even if it is a mistake down the road, then you've learned something and you are one step closer to living in integrity because you decided to stick with your own thoughts on the matter and not let other people's opinions sway you. I remember one time that I had applied for a new job about 3 months into starting the job I had been in at that time. And I had accepted the new job and I would be leaving that new job about 5 months after starting it. And I was really excited. I was moving cities. This was going to be a big positive change in my life. The position that I was moving into was really exciting at the time for me and way different than what I was doing. And I shared this with a couple of my old coworkers that I was still connected with, and I kind of saw them as mentors and peers in a way. And one of them was super excited for me and they were like, this is so amazing. This is such a great change in your life. Like, I can't wait to see what happens for you. And the other one really had the opposite reaction. I was told that this was possibly a mistake and that the industry was really small and that I was going to be judged for leaving a position so quickly after starting it and that this could really damage my career. And so in these situations, you can have people that are going to hype you up and they're going to support you no matter what. And there's going to be people in your life that are going to project their own fears onto what you want to do in life. And it's less to do with you and it's more to do with their own perceptions and the own like limiting beliefs or even their own values that they live by in their lives. If I had listened to the second person, I never would have moved to a new city and had that great experience that I had there. And the next step here is to have patience. It's a journey to get to know yourself again. You can't live your whole life pleasing others and going off track in order to keep other people happy and then suddenly expect to know yourself, know your values, know what you're passionate about, and find your purpose. You really need to almost see yourself like a young child who's learning to walk for the first time. You need to be patient and just encouraging and understanding. And you really need to have an open mind and a growth attitude. So you wouldn't get mad at a little child who is transitioning from crawling to standing up to walking. They're probably going to try a lot, fail a lot, and it's going to take some time. But you would be patient with that child, right? You wouldn't be expecting them to suddenly be running the day they start to try and crawl. And that's the same way it is with you. You're going to need to try a lot. And it's okay if you don't like things that you try or things just don't work out. That's all part of the process. Now that you know the steps that need to be taken to start living in integrity and stop people pleasing, let's talk about some of the outcomes that you can expect once you start implementing these steps. I'd like to think of these as a little bit of encouragement or motivation for you to start implementing boundaries and getting to know yourself and everything that we talked about in the last part of the video. So the first, maybe the most obvious or most cliche outcome is that you really will be happier and more confident. And some of the examples that I can give you are the opinions of others won't affect you as much, and you'll no longer fear negative reactions or a contrasting opinion to your own. You no longer fear doing things wrong, And by wrong, I mean it's upset someone and then you feel like you did something wrong. And you'll no longer rely on the opinions of others for your own self-worth. When you get into conflicts with others, it's going to be a lot easier to stand by your own opinions, and you won't have that sort of fearful internal freak out that comes from conflict with other people. Another really great outcome is that you're going to start to trust yourself again. So you'll find that it's a lot easier to make decisions, and you just have this inner knowing of what you need to do. And so you no longer turn to others because you really want them to just tell you what to do. You can still talk things through with people, but I find that in the talking through process, I just gain even more clarity on my truth. And talking through things with people just sort of reaffirms what you already know you should be doing, because you just have a better connection with your own inner truth and you don't need the opinions of others to help you. You may have just needed to talk things through in order to hear your own truth through the conversation with them. Another thing that happened for me is I no longer felt like I was wearing a mask, because I was no longer trying to play a role that I thought other people wanted me to play. And this definitely can help you reduce any sort of imposter syndrome that you're feeling. I would say that the people pleasing for me wasn't the sole reason I felt imposter syndrome, but definitely was contributing. I would say that the way that this ties into the imposter syndrome is that once you stop people pleasing and you start to have a better sense of your own inner truth, then you can make decisions in life that remove you from situations where you're acting in a role or in a way that isn't true to you. And another thing that's very closely tied to this is you may start to feel less isolated in your life. And what I mean by this is you secretly inside feel different than the people that you're hanging out with, but you're playing a role in order to fit in with these people. And so you can feel really isolated because on the inside, you know that this isn't you, and you just feel really lonely. And one of the things in my life where I really felt this was at work, because I would go to work and I would look around and just feel so isolated. And I would wonder, do all my coworkers really like coming here? Like, is this really fulfilling for them? Because it isn't for me. And so I would just feel like, is everyone else happy to be living this life? Am I really the only one that's like secretly really unhappy but pretending to be happy? Another outcome is that you're slowly going to become more and more aware of the times that you're not living in integrity with yourself. And your attitude around living in integrity is going to completely change. I think it comes from the relief and the weight lifted off your shoulders and the newfound sense of confidence and happiness in life, but you just really start to fiercely guard living in integrity, because you know that living in integrity feels so much better and so much more fulfilling than the kind of shallow fake feedback you get from pleasing others and having their validation be the source of your happiness in life. And so one of the things that happens when you're really fiercely guarding your own integrity in life is that you become okay with being like the difficult or the fussy person. You become okay with annoying other people by doing your own thing or not just being easy and going with the group. And you're okay being perceived as having changed. You could move to a new city, really come into yourself, and then go back home and visit your family and friends. And you could get some feedback, or some people's feathers could be ruffled because you've changed. And you're just honestly okay with that because it just feels so much better being yourself. All right, so there's all the positive outcomes and changes that you can expect from starting to live in integrity and stopping being a people pleaser. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if the description of people pleasing really resonated with you and you realize that you have some of these tendencies in your life, I really encourage you to start implementing the tips that I shared in this video. It will completely transform your life. So make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really supports the channel and you'll be able to watch videos like this every week. And I will see you in the next video.